Alright, what's going on, guys? I haven't uploaded a video in a while. I figured I would check out something that's on a lot of social media's minds and somewhat. Why the rate of single men in the US looking for dates has declined. Now that kind of generically, goes out like why do they not want to get married? Do they not want to do anything? It all kind of, spreads out pretty much everywhere. And then I found this video on CNN. This guy looks fucking he looks like scum incarnate. I'm not gonna lie. I'm sorry. I don't really judge anything that comes off of CNN or Fox News or pretty much anything that comes out of the mainstream news. Honestly, I've come across them lying way too often. But I found a video and I figured I'd watch it and see what mainstream media actually thinks and compare it to what I think about why this is happening. So let's give it a shot.
Last week, I delved here into recent data from the CDC suggesting major problems with regard to the mental health of our adolescents, surges in depression, and suicide.
Yeah, you mean because male suicide rates are apparently equivalent to breast cancer death rates, but one is mentioned, one is not. That might be an issue.
Suicidal ideation, especially true for our girls. This
Nope,
week,
guess
I
not.
found
Never mind. Nope, men are still not being mentioned. Never mind.
to worry about young men. This headline from The Hill, it caught my eye. Most young men are single. Most young women are not.
True.
The story reported that as of 2022, Pew Research Center found 30% of U.S. adults are neither married, living with a partner, nor engaged in a committed relationship. Nearly half of all young adults are single. Now, look at these numbers. 34% of women, twice as many, a whopping 63% of men. What explains that?
Very simply, what explains that is it's come across recently. Well, it's come across to be well known through all these dating sites, but it's been well known recently, spreading throughout social media. Women are, shockingly enough, the ones that kind of play this role in choosing who they want to go, and then men are pretty much the ones that get chosen. It's not really, at least from my experience and what I've seen through social media and through everything associated with it. A lot of other specifically red pill channels will kind of say the same thing. Tinder came out. 80% of women chasing after the top maybe 10% of men, right? And then it just kind of culminates into that. And then you get a social media, a lot of women saying, would you rather be a king's mistress or a peasant's wife? And then you'll see a lot of women say king's mistress. And a lot of social media women say, I want the best, which there's nothing wrong with that, of course, but anyway.
I pulled the Pew study and I read with interest. Turns out since 2019, the share of single men who say they're looking for dates or a relationship has declined from 61% to 50%. In 2018, 28% of men ages 18 to 30 reported they'd had no sex in the past year, compared with 18% of women of that age. The Hill report said men in their 20s are more likely than women in their 20s to be romantically uninvolved, sexually dormant, friendless, and lonely. They stand at the vanguard of an epidemic of declining marriage, sexuality, and relationships that afflicts all of young America. Among the causes, among the factors, a reliance on social media and online porn. But also, more young...
Here we go. All right, we're going to get ready and get into this, I guess. It's because of porn. It's because of porn, everyone.
Women are hooking up with each other or dating and marrying slightly older men.
Did he say hold on, did he say women are hooking up with each other? Is that what he just said? Hold on.
All of young America.
Hold on.
Among the causes, among the factors, a reliance on social media and online porn.
Porn, yeah.
But also, more young women are hooking up with each other or dating and marrying slightly older men, and heterosexual...
What? Is that really your second thought? The first one is porn is to blame, and then the second one is young women can't be in a relationship with other men. They're hooking up with themselves. They're just magically turning lesbian. Holy shit.
Sexual women are getting more choosy. Other troubling statistics about men come from
Oh
a
my
2021 study from the Survey Center for American Life. They found the share of men who have 6 or more close friends, which in 1990 was 55%,
Oh my
by
God.
2021 had shrunk by half.
Yep.
Meanwhile, those with literally
Oh, that
zero
was funny.
close friends, which stood at 3% in 1990, has zoomed to 15%. An expert quoted by The Hill said this disconnect can have catastrophic consequences for young men.
No
Quote,
shit.
in the worst case scenario, the young American man's social disconnect can have tragic consequences. Young men commit suicide at 4 times the rate of young women. Younger women are largely responsible for rising rates of mass shootings.
The younger men, you meant to say, but yeah. But yes, that is absolutely a problem. Like, I'll let him
trend that
finish.
some researchers link to their growing social isolation.
So again, he says it right there. One problem that is specific to men is that and again, you'll get a lot of these people are starting to say it out loud. The worst thing that you can be as a man is isolated from society and disconnected completely. The worst thing that society can have is a man that doesn't care at all. They will get into the worst shit that you could think of, such as mass shootings that we've seen. And again, I gotta go back and mention there was literally like a few years ago, and I don't know if it just stopped or what happened. I remember working at a factory job, and literally every day when I went into lunch, I would hear about a new school shooting that would happen. Completely different each time, a different school shooting that happened. The severity ranged, but for one death to but it's just for like 2 weeks straight. 2 weeks straight, a different one every time I went to lunch. A new school shooting. Shit, it's serious. It's a problem with our core, but it's not going to get any better when you just don't include men in society. It's just something that happens.
Well, those words reminded me of a conversation that I had over a year ago right here on CNN with NYU professor Scott Galloway.
In
Let's take a look.
Albion, no matter where you
Ad.
go or what you do, your
Albion
life will
Online
accompany
seems fun.
you on your journey. Perhaps you'll pick the odds.
Okay, come on.
American's best friend. It can carry.
There we go.
But the issue is
This guy, yeah,
you
I've
have
seen
a
him
group of
before.
men-
He's 50-50. I don't know. He'll get it eventually.
The lower half of attractiveness of men and online dating, which has doubled. Now it's about half of relationships. And the top 20% of men in terms of attractiveness get about 60% of the interest. You end up with a group of
More like 80%. More like 20% of the men get 80% of the interest, I would say. They did studies about this.
men that are more prone to conspiracy theory, more prone to misogynistic content, more prone to
He says this thing, misogynistic content, but in reality, in conspiracy theories, how many again, when it's CNN saying this, how many conspiracy theories in the past that were said to be conspiracy theories that were proven true? Like the coronavirus, unfortunately, was one of them. The voting, whether or not both sides say that the other side cheated and all that, it's just a conspiracy. I don't know, a bunch of shit that I can't remember. I don't know.
not believe in climate
Misogynistic
change.
content, though.
So
It's not some of it is. I don't know.
This is the American
Some of it
story.
is.
If it's written with a pen whose ink is failing young men, does not end well. This is an existential crisis, failing young men.
It is. I would agree with that.
As always, Professor Galloway was prescient. Back with me now is Scott Galloway. He's a professor of marketing at NYU Stern School of Business. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's the host of the Professor G podcast and author of multiple best-selling books, most recently, Adrift, America in 100 Charts. Scott, thanks for returning. Hasn't the advantage always been to those with the looks and or the money? What's changed?
Nothing.
First off, Mike,
It's just being well known. We got cameras now.
I just want to say thank you for raising this issue a year ago when a lot of media companies were afraid to talk about this for fear of its being pro-men was somehow being anti-women. Look, this is returning to the natural order of things. For the majority of history, a small percentage of men have had the majority of the mating opportunities. But in America, we decided to make a huge investment in what would probably be the greatest innovation in history, and that is in the middle class. From 1945 to 1947, 7 million men returned from war were discharged from the service, and we decided to give them the GI Bill, subsidized mortgages. We saw education rates go from 5 to 45%. They were valued, and we had such a strong manufacturing base that you had massive marriage and household formation. And some men were seen as more economically and emotionally viable. And you've seen the reverse happen with the offshoring of much of our manufacturing base, with a society that quite frankly doesn't value young men. When we talk about problems with people of color or women, we see it as a systemic societal problem. When we see problems or the stats that you just mentioned, we see it as accountability, or that men just need to level up. But married households and household formation are better citizens. They vote. They save at twice the rate. They're less likely to commit crimes. And we have fewer and fewer viable men. We have a...
Okay, but are you going to get to what you think the actual issue is? Because it's not because we invested in the middle class and then they just said, fuck it, we're not going to do that anymore. Or because you could see a strong correlation there, definitely, but I don't think that's the problem. The problem isn't, well, we had, the majority of men that were able to make it on one salary. You could argue that back then it worked because women were still getting into the workforce, and where there was this well-known understanding of, women would find a man who was able to make a salary enough to have a home, enough to have a car, multiple vehicles for multiple kids, and take all care of them all perfectly fine. I think that's kind of along the lines of women were being pushed into it. Now, I still think that kind of dynamic is better. I still think that the situation where obviously it's changed, men can't earn one salary anymore, one average salary, and have that kind of lifestyle. But I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is we have most of the women chasing most of the men, and then we have social media with women on it mainly pushing for other women to chase the top percentage of men. And we have women saying don't settle for less. We have women saying it's a social stigma pretty much, but it's towards the way of degeneracy. We don't have society saying, hey, do this morally good thing, get married and actually, treat marriage appropriately when we have this insane divorce rate. We don't have society saying, have children young. We don't have society saying take care of your golden years when you're young so that you can grow into each other together and prioritize what you want to prioritize when you're young. And promoting good values. I hate to say it, promoting Christian values. There's way too much degeneracy that's being pushed on social media. That's what I think. And it's being socially accepted.
Dearth of economically and emotionally viable men. But the middle class is an accident. Unless you invest in it, it doesn't happen. Eisenhower decided to invest $500 billion in a national highway.
That's not going to change anything. Investing in the middle class will fix the economy. It will not fix women wanting to date. We see women all the time on social media saying they don't want to date average men. It's clear. Expectations of social media have gone through the roof. They're farther up than they've ever been, and there's no sign of them going down. A middle class that's strong isn't going to change that.
Project that created tons of jobs. We have, and by the way, the tax rate back then was 91%. We raised money and we redistributed in social programs that made young people more economically viable.
We can't do that. We can't do that anymore.
Scott, you toss in the influence of social media and how relationships today, they don't come from, in our era, happenstance and mingling, right? They come from swiping, and that further accelerates this issue. Am I right?
Just
what do you mean it further accelerates the issue?
And this SOP is finally done.
Oh, it's been the chaser to it. I mean, to have an honest conversation about this, we have to be honest, and that is that men and women have different mating criteria. One quarter of
shit.
women, excuse me, one quarter of men saying economic viability is a key criteria in a mate. 3/4 of women say that is important. And when you're on a two-dimensional format, where now it's 1 and 2 relationships begin online, it used to be 1 and 4 just a few years ago, it gets distilled down to a small number of criteria, specifically for.
I hate how he says relationships start online. That's not what they're called. You have to keep up with the terminology. They're called situationships. They're not called relationships anymore. We don't have relationships. We have people hooking up. We have people not taking relationships seriously. We don't have actual accountability anymore. We don't have any accountability anymore.
For men, it's does she look attractive, and specifically for men, is he able to signal his ability to garner resources in the future? An average attractive male on Tinder gets swiped less than 1% of the time, and there's 3 men on Tinder for every 1 woman. So you've distilled it, you've taken out one of the key components of mating dynamics, and that is vibe, humor, body language, pheromones, the ability to be, quite frankly, a little bit persistent in the pursuit of a romantic relationship.
I would agree with that.
We have no third places anymore, no places to meet. People aren't going to bars, they aren't sports league, they aren't going to church, they aren't even going to work. So
They were, and then women just openly said they were using men to get free food, pay for free drinks, and again, not take anything seriously. If you look at how relationships were taken seriously, let's just say a century ago, we can even say like 60 years ago, like actually going on a date was stigmatized to be, wow, there might be some intention there to get married or to be in a serious relationship or something like that. Nowadays, it's not taken seriously at all. There's women saying openly they will just, use men for a wallet. And then, of course, there's the top men that have all of these options that will, reverse it and just use women for their bodies. And it reminds me of a friend of mine. I used to work at American Red Cross, and one of the patients told me about how her daughter was in a relationship with a man for 5 years. And all of a sudden, she just asked, "Hey, so what are you thinking about marriage?" She was in the room. It's like, "What do you think about marriage?" It's that question. Like, I don't really want to get married to you. It's like, what? Oh, do you not want to do it? And they just broke up. 5 years, completely done with. No care in the world. So there's women that will use men literally just for a wallet. That's it. And there's the top men that have all these options that will just use women for sex. There's no accountability anymore. There is no actual taking serious dating anymore, except if you're in these, I would say if you're in these tight Christian circles, whether you're of faith or not, that's just the reality. It's not taken seriously anymore. That's a huge problem. It's not stigmatized at all anymore.
So it gets distilled down to very 1 or 2 dimensional attributes. And the reality is women are much choosier than men, and they can apply those screens, and they allocate all of their attention to a small number of men.
Yeah.
That results in just essentially at the end of the day, a lack of opportunities. Chris Williams summarized it perfectly. He called it the high heels effect. In the last 40 years, more women have graduated from college than men, and they're not interested in mating with non-college grads. They now own more homes, single women, than single men. So what you have is women say they won't date anyone shorter than them, 50% of them. Effectively, what you have metaphorically over the last 40 years is women have been getting taller and taller, and men have been getting shorter and shorter. How many of us have said, I know a ton of great single women, they can't find a date? That's not true. They can't find a date. They can't find a man they find economically or emotionally viable. If we don't make a massive investment in young people and make more economically and emotionally viable men, we're going to see a lack of household formation. We're going to see a decline in the middle class. And we're going to see, quite frankly, just a lot of young men who are terrible citizens.
But I have to disagree with one thing. He's looking, again, he's not talking about the causes of it. Like, there's more women going to college than men. That's an effect. So we need to talk about what causes that. Now, of course, you can get into DEI programs. You can get into, and women are of course seen as a category of representation, even though they represent 50% of society. But anyway, you can argue that, but what I think it is that it's just not seen as something that you want to kind of, I don't know how to put it. There's not much. What's the reason to go to college? The reason to go to college is to earn more money. What's the reason to earn more money? The reason to earn more money for men, and I would say this at least for myself, my reason to earn more money would be to be able to live comfortably for myself and make it so, ideally for me, my partner would not have to work unless she wants to. And again, they've done studies on this. 85% of women, if they could choose it, would rather be stay-at-home. They would rather not have to work. They'd rather be stay-at-home wives, stay-at-home girlfriends. 85%. That study came out recently. I heard it somewhere. And for me, I would rather earn more to make it so my partner doesn't have to work. Now, when you have this high level of men, high number of men, 63% is what he was saying, single out of no relationship, not able to get into a relationship, not actually seeing relationships as a possibility, why do they want to go to college for? If they're seeing how men end up when they get divorced, when they get their kids taken away from them, at 90% of the time, kids taken away from them, alimony paid to the wife, child support paid to the wife, based on the amount of money that the man makes, and a simple, very easy to do domestic report, regardless of any history of domestic violence, and that will easily get him out of the house, the kids with her, no investigation needed. When you have, what is it called, prenups, proven to be completely ineffective, when you have that kind of future to look for, when you have social media influencers making all this money and getting all these girls and you ain't getting shit, do you really want to waste time going to college, trying to earn more, trying to make it so you putting in all this effort for nothing, or so that someone else can take it? The answer is no. It's a very long response. I'm very sorry about that. But this is what men are saying. This is what men are saying.
So is the answer to fix this economically, and who will
No.
champion this conversation?
Unless you want to disadvantage women, which I don't think anyone would get behind, the answer is not to disadvantage them. The answer is to make it so that technology doesn't exist. That's just it. Women want the best they can get. And so do men. Men want the best they can get just for themselves. It's just on a different scale. You know, when women want it based on stats, and men want it based on caring and loving and all that. It's a very, I would say some of them, because it's just because of the amount of choice that they have. I hope it doesn't come off as misogynistic. It's just because they have a lot of choice. When you have a lot of choice, like we see examples in China and Japan and Korea, and with the exact same thing, with this requirement of having to make this amount of money and having to put down and invest like a decent amount of money towards the wedding, that's because they have the choice to do that. And they have the exact same problem we do. So no, it's not to do that. You can, I mean, unless you're going to disadvantage them, unless you're going to incentivize, hey, let's give men millions and millions of dollars. No, what you need to do is just get rid of technology. It's just, it's not, it's going to kill us all.
You felt obliged to compliment me at the outset because we had engaged on this a year ago, and here I am revisiting it. And I read into that the fact that you think that it's politically incorrect even to have this dialogue.
When you're seen as advocating for men because of the 300,000-year head start we've had, it seems somehow as anti-female.
He's going to piss me off if he talks about this head start. There was no head start when men were dying, like actually dying in wars by 16 or 18 years old. Imagine not even being able to live your fucking life. You're dying in wars. You go back as far as is for these thousands of years that he talks about where men literally had to, with sticks and stones, fight beasts and fight all these dangerous, fucked up animals and dinosaurs, all these beasts and shit, thousands of years ago to conquer it and make sure that everyone could live peacefully, you're going to call that a fucking head start? No. It's not a head start. It's what needed to happen. It's what needed to happen. And you can say that there's some shit that should not have happened. And I'll tell you one thing that should not have happened. Men technically able to SA, I'll just say, I don't know if I can say it. There was a time when men were able to, SA their wives, and it's not a crime. There's a, a property sense. That, absolutely no. I'm not going to defend that at all. I'm not going to waste any time defending that. It's absolutely terrible. But if we're going to talk about what needed to happen thousands of years ago up until this point, it's not that men had the advantage. Complete fucking bullshit. Men did what they needed to do for us to live today. And women put up with all of that bullshit the entire time as well and did what they needed to do. Respectable as well, 100%. Don't discredit that by just saying men had the upper hand, men, did whatever the fuck they wanted to. No, a lot of men died in wars, a lot of men died fighting these animals and creating the society that we have today. Show respect to that. Show respect to the women that supported that.
There's a lot of very unfortunate misogyny online that is masquerading as being pro-men. A lot of TikTok celebrities who talk about advocating for men, it's just thinly veiled misogyny. What do we need? We need more...
I really wish you would give me some examples as misogyny. Because, again, there's that word being thrown around a lot, misogyny. And when they don't actually give examples, how am I supposed to get behind it?
Freshman seats in colleges. We need a massive investment in vocational training. We need to figure out a way to get more permitting for housing so young people can afford housing. We need to recognize our economic policies.
What's more housing going to do? More housing for more lonely people? That's not tackling relationships.
Literally allocate wealth from young people to old people. The percentage of wealth that young people control under the age of 40 has been cut from 12% to 6%. These are concerted, deliberate decisions. We did away with the child tax credit. We don't want to make it any easier for people to have kids, but seniors just got their largest cost of living adjustment increase in history. We have made the decision to make it harder and more expensive for people to find each other, for people to mate, and for people to have children. And without children, we turn into Japan and Italy, and that is we go into population decline, and our economy goes into decline.
Economy doesn't go to decline. What happens is Biden opens up the entire fucking border for millions of people to come in, because they actually had some people on the Senate floor say, because of the crisis of people not having enough kids, we need to import people from other countries to keep our current economy running. That was their excuse for throwing open the border, which is not a good reason, because there's a lot more problems associated with it.
About to become a society by the turn of the century. There will be 8 times as many people over the age of 60 and half as many kids under the age of 5. Nursery schools will become these strange situations with old people staring through fences at these creatures they don't see in the wild called children. Is this the world we want? Do we want a lack of kids? Do we want a lack of ability to create households? The happiest, most prosperous, most purposeful people in America are middle-class families. And we have made a concerted decision
100%.
to punch it in the gut and make it harder for that type of family formation. And we're going to lose prosperity, and we're going to lose purpose.
All right, so here's what I'm going to give on my opinion on that. That's the end of the video. I'm going to go ahead and give my opinion on here. Here's my opinion on what needs to happen to fix this crisis that we have, to fix the dating crisis, to fix the children, low birth rate crisis, to fix everything. Here's what needs to happen. There's a nice little video that you can watch that shows our fitness program in, I think it was the 1980s. Or it was a Britain for a fitness program. It was a Britain fitness program. And what they had was a PT military style fitness program to where everyone they would run. If you want to watch a military recruitment video, you can get a good idea. You can see everyone is in shape, everyone is in uniform, everyone is the same. And that's important because if you culminate everyone together as the same, which is why a lot of schools will have uniforms. That's why every military has uniforms. The work has uniforms. You want to build everyone to be similar. And similarity is important because it eliminates a lot of these external influences on, oh, this person is a little bit more of this quality, or this one's a little bit more of this quality. No. Everyone is in shape, which is a huge problem today as well that we need to fix. Everyone is, seen as the same. Everyone can connect on a more in a more closely knit level by, exercising together, by just, operating the same. That's what needs to happen. Bullying needs to be done away with instantly. Any bullying needs to be met with literal retribution. We need to eradicate bullying completely. We need to build similarities in class. We need to build uniforms back in class. We need to build doing these huge stadiums of students gathering together in their entire school, the entire school out together in uniform, actually mingling with each other and understanding that they are all the same, that we stigmatize. Oh, I don't like him because he's not as tall. Oh, I don't like him because he's not as, this or that. Or, oh, I don't like her because she's not as this or that. No, it's just people that are in the exact same situation that are able to recognize that in themselves and in others. And through that, they can find more commonalities and things that they have in common together, and they can grow through that together. Nostalgia will always be the number one factor in anything that you see that you can connect to. Everything. In movies, nostalgia runs. In games, nostalgia runs up on the top. Everything. Nostalgia is going to be the one thing. And when you can build it together when they're young, when they're in school, and you can stigmatize. We need to also stigmatize divorce. We need to get rid of these incentives to divorce. We need to incentivize marriage. We need to incentivize just relationships. Incentivize what you want and de-incentivize what you don't want. And then build on commonalities in the school system when they're young, when everyone is young, when everyone's able to grow together. Because kids do not judge anything. Children do not judge a fucking thing based on what they like and what they see in front of them. They aren't like a 4-year-old girl is not thinking, well, I like this boy, but he's not going to grow up to be 6 feet, or he's not going to be a millionaire, or he's not like none of that shit. And men are not going to grow up thinking of how many, girls they're going to sleep with. They don't do that at like 4 or 5 years old. That is developed. That is learned behavior. You need to stigmatize that behavior. You need to make sure everyone can grow up together in a cohesive commonality environment. And you need to force it upon them. People don't want to wear uniforms. They don't want to do all this shit in schools. They want the freedom of choice. That's not the reality that we can have. That's what needs to be fixed. They don't grow up that way. That's not a natural thought process. They learn that. So get rid of whatever behavior says that. It's that simple. Long video. Sorry about that. The video's 10 minutes long. I made it 30 minutes. Let me know what your thoughts in the comments. Let me know if I'm just an idiot. I could be a misogynist. Whatever. Let me know in the comments below. Thank you.